Hello, everybody, and welcome to the I Am 1-2 podcast with your host, Christopher Cohn. With me, as always, is my dear good friend and my assistant, my producer. I could not do this without Mr. Dan the Man in the production studios. Say hello to everybody, Dan.
Welcome, everybody, to the show. Today's going to be a great one. Not that there are any of them that are not, but welcome to today's shows. I really like these guest shows.
I do too, Dan. Thank you for that. And he is right. We do have a great episode with my good friend, LJ, here to join us, also known by our friends as Lincoln, which is his real name, but we like calling him LJ. I love having people on the show so that they can come in here and give a different perspective on everything we're talking about in the other weeks. So, last week, I don't know if it'll be last week or next week, sometimes these don't fit the rotation, but, we talked about sex, or we talk about relationships, we talk about boundaries, we talk about all these different issues, and to hear somebody's story and how they use these tools and how they worked for them, it's so much more valuable than just hearing one person tell it. So I love it. Also, I'm addicted to people's stories. I've always been a fan of movies and books and things like that as a kid, and I'm always pulling for the underdog in movies. So whether it's Rocky or whoever it is, so usually an addict is just the underdog in their own story, but then they arise and they rise up and they succeed. So I think you're going to be in for a real treat today because LJ's been through a lot as a professional, real deal alcoholic addict. So my hat's off to you. I love the people that are professionals at what we do. So we like to start the podcast just asking some simple statistics. For instance, what is your sobriety date?
Sobriety date is September 22nd, 2018.
September 22nd, which means we just celebrated.
Just celebrated 6 years. Absolute miracle.
Let me ask you a question that we all have. Did you ever think you'd have 6 years?
Not at all.
Yeah, right?
Not even close, man.
Like maybe scratch together a year if you were lucky. That's the way I felt.
Not completely sober, no way.
Yeah.
No
really?
way. Yeah.
Even
I've
then?
tried it, throughout jails and prisons, rehab centers, and I still couldn't even maintain sobriety in those places. So, yeah, it's, like I said, it's an absolute miracle. It's never thought about. I never thought I would hit it.
Power of this program.
Yeah.
It does for us what we could never do for ourselves. I mean, even me at 40 years, that's inconceivable. Believe me, I can't even fathom that I do what I do today. So it can be heaven for you too out there. So stay tuned and listen. So tell us a little bit about where you grew up, your family system, brothers and sisters, and did you come from one of those so-called quote-unquote dysfunctional families with alcohol and drugs in it?
Somewhat, yes. It was always, behind closed doors type deal for the most part. So I grew up in Louisville, born and raised. I was an only child until I was about 9, between 8 and 9, and then I got a brother. And
that's a pretty good age gap.
Yeah. At that point, the first couple years, the first year that I was a big brother, that's exactly what I was a big brother, right? Like he was the most important thing at that point. And then things shifted, the whole energy shifted, man. He started walking and talking and snatching PlayStation or Nintendo games. I think it was Nintendo 64 at the time. Snatching Nintendo games out and running back to my mom and screaming why I hit him, and so that turned into this, I guess, resentment early on with him, and I used him at the butt of all my jokes. Growing up, I was always, like you said earlier, the underdog, right? I was always little. I was always short. I was always skinny. I was always never picked because of those things. I was never okay with that, man. Going through elementary school, I remember in 2nd grade, I went in the front door of school. I was small enough where I could walk under the windows of the office and they wouldn't even see me, right? So I walked in the front doors of Bowen Elementary, and their doors were like front and back, right? And I walked straight out the back door, and then they had the police and everybody looking for me. My parents freaked all the way out. But that's, when I look back at that today, that's when the manipulation and all those things that we do throughout the madness, throughout our disease and addiction, all that started so early. Right, and I didn't know that.
Or how would we know even what that was?
Yeah, right.
If you do that in front of a professional, they're going to put some label on you like you're ADD because you can't focus in class, or they're going to say you got oppositional defiance, because
Yeah.
you're just acting out. But what people don't realize, and I'm so glad you started with this is going to help a lot of people, LJ, is that our disease exists while we're born, okay? Like any other genetic condition, it's passed on to us, whether it's expressing itself because it's progressed so that it's showing up yet, or whether it's more subtle. But like what I relate to is I was always bigger than the rules. And I was very subtle. You talk about manipulation. These guys that would act out in front of the teacher, I'd be like, you're an idiot, dude. You wait till she leaves, and then you pull your shit. And then when she comes back, you do the old Eddie Haskell. Well, your hair looks nice today, Mrs. Blah, blah, blah. And suddenly I'm the teacher's pet, and he's getting in trouble, and I'm laughing at him when he's going to the principal's office. And I was just uncanny. I was going to get that extra cookie. I was going to get in the cabinet and eat when we're not supposed to eat. I'm going to break the rules and never get caught. I mean, I had that criminal type mentality ever since I was born, but I didn't know I was doing wrong. All I knew is I had these needs. I wanted to do what I wanted to do. And to me, with your story, that's what that sounds like. I want to leave school, so I'm going to leave school, right?
Yeah. And I always did what I wanted to do, like you said, no matter what, and nothing was ever enough. Nothing was ever enough. It didn't matter if it was gaming. It didn't matter if it was snacks. It didn't matter what it was. It was never enough. I always wanted more.
I talked about that in group recently, like on Christmas. If you remember how excited you are as a kid, you can't wait till it gets here. You're going to get your gifts, and you're so excited about what you might get. And then when all the gifts are unwrapped, and you could have a ton of booty that you got that year, and you're sitting there going, is that all there is? Is there no more gifts to unwrap?
Yeah.
Look what you got. You don't need another gift to unwrap.
And I remember many years feeling. I remember that feeling now that you said that, right? Like that almost disappointment of, well, I got all this stuff, and I've always had all this stuff, right? I grew up with both parents in the house, and they always gave us everything that we wanted, right? For the most part. Anything we asked for, we got it. We were spoiled, rotten, and even at Christmas, all these things come in, go-karts, mini bikes, BB guns, I mean, all the things, all the game systems, all the everything, year after year. My parents went to somewhere in Middle Tennessee when Nintendo first came out to give me my first Nintendo.
Jeez,
right?
That's awesome.
So, and that's always been a thing throughout the years, and it's still at the end of opening everything, I'm looking around the tree like, where is that other gift, right? Where is that other thing that I need so bad to make me happy?
Wow. And so when we talk about that God-sized hole that alcoholics have, and to feel that as a child and have no idea, I just thought everybody felt that way.
Yeah.
And it's not true. We are a unique class of person. The other thing I was thinking about in your family system that resonated with me is my younger brother was 4 years younger than me. But because I was uncomfortable and I got picked on, I would pass it on to him. And I felt terrible about that.
Yeah. I did exactly that, man. Like I said, he was the butt of our jokes, butt of my jokes. Before drugs and alcohol really stepped into my life, I met a guy down the street. He was just like me. He was a loner. He was standing on his porch by himself. I was playing basketball in my driveway by myself, and he's smoking it. And we ended up linking up, and he came down to play basketball or whatever. And he was older than me. He was, I guess, 5 or 6, 7 years older than me. And we would use my brother at this point for our entertainment. Like, he would ride his big wheel down the driveway, and we'd come through with our bikes barreling down the street and just slam into the big wheel and knock him spinning. And that was funny for us, right? Like, that was, and he would, cry and run to my mom and all these things. But, we turned it into a game to where I wouldn't get in trouble. Right? Steven, he wants to do this. This is fun for him, right? Yeah. He wants to hang out, and all he really wanted to do is hang out with his big brother.
What I'm hearing is just boys being boys, you know. And so for any of you ladies or anybody out there, it's like, that's cruel, and it's like, this is what guys do, man. This is our idea of fun. Let's throw rocks at the neighbor kid. That'll be fun.
Yeah.
And then we're doing that usually out of, as long as it's not me they're throwing rocks at, I'm going to join in, so they're not throwing them at me.
Yeah. Well, that behavior escalated really quick too.
Okay.
So it got.
First off, before we get out of childhood, though, how lucky you were to have both parents in the house.
Yeah.
And that's a valuable lesson in itself. A lot of people assume addicts and alcoholics have to come from a broken family system. Not true whatsoever. I know many people that had good upbringings. They just had the genes. That's all there is to it.
Yeah.
So who was, if anybody in the periphery, grandparents, uncles, aunts, anybody have alcohol or drugs going on?
So growing up, my dad always involved me, no matter what. Before my brother, after my brother, he always involved us in whatever he was doing, whether it be working on race cars in the garage, fixing the neighbor kids' bikes, whatever it was, Dad was involved. So like you were saying, it's not like it was a broken home, a broken family. Like everything we wanted or needed or anything we craved was there. So I can't blame any of this on my upbringing. Like you said, it's just the genes. It was just in me. Dad, like I said, he worked on race cars. He raced on weekends. He would be in the garage with his buddies drinking, and they'd drink a 12-pack, a case of beer or whatever every night, you know? And they'd be out there talking on the CB radio, and I'd be right there next to him, right? And I know there's been times that Dad handed me his little PBR, and I'd take a sip of his little Pabst Blue Ribbon or whatever. I know that happened, you know? As far as drug use, growing up, I always wanted more. So I would sneak in. Once I started smoking cigarettes, I would start sneaking into Mom's cigarette packs, right? And I would find these little baggies or these little cut straws or these little things, and I would take them. I didn't know what they were. I didn't use them. I didn't do anything. I just took them, right? Come to find out, it was other things, right? They were doing their own thing. But when it came down to it, when it came down to it being a problem, my mom, I remember this vividly, she told my dad, it's either this or us. You know, you got the choice right now. And he cut ties with all his friends, all his old everything, right, immediately. And by that time, I was already pretty far into the disease, to the madness.
So pause on that for a second. We do know, and we've mentioned this on the podcast before, that cigarettes is the actual gateway drug that's been scientifically proven. It's a secret thing. You're sneaking around doing it, and you've already smoked something, so it's easier to smoke something else. So that's the first thing a lot of kids start with. I think Dan has a little bit of that in his story. And then also, your dad being able to put it down to try to stop, that means, I want to explain this to everybody out there, that he wasn't full-blown alcoholic yet. This is a progressive illness. And mind you, you can't call yourself an alcoholic but then say you just stopped, because that's not the definition. If you look up the definition, it's a guy that can't stop no matter what. So God bless him, he hadn't progressed to that point. So let's get to that moment of your first use, though. Back me up, and how were you was it from that older kid coming around, or what happened?
Actually, yeah. So I started smoking cigarettes when I was in about the 6th grade, and it was that whole stealing thing. I wanted to be cool. I wanted to fit in. So I would steal cigarettes, and we'd sneak out to the little water, the little drainage ditch, and we'd puff cigarettes. I don't even know if we were inhaling them at the time, but it was something that I wasn't supposed to do.
Did you get the head change?
I did. Did
it get your attention?
It did, and I loved that feeling. I loved the attention that I was getting from other people, too, right? I loved that being able to fit in.
Even if that attention is you're turning green and look like you want to throw up, you're still one of the cool kids because you're doing it.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. My first drink, I guess, me and a buddy of mine, a different guy, for alcohol, we stole some fuzzy navel wine cooler from my mom's refrigerator. And I remember that. It's crazy how I remember that.
Fuzzy navel. So appealing, everyone.
Yeah, right? Yeah, right. And it was just one. Like, we stole and we split it, and we thought we were it. We thought, this is it. This is the life that they're living.
Yeah.
They're having a great time, so let's do the same thing. They're out partying right now. Let's party too. And from there, man, it wasn't an everyday thing at first,
right? But
it absolutely took off.
So alcohol was the first thing.
Alcohol was absolutely my first.
And did you get the effect?
Honestly, I don't remember.
Maybe not. Yeah, not enough to really put up. The effect moment that I call it is such a monumental moment where we go, whoa.
Yeah.
What's this? And that may have come from a different drug. So we'll wait until that part of the story. Yeah. But okay, so we're doing a little bit of alcohol. This is kind of still normal children behavior, breaking rules, being rebels, doing what they do. So, none of that is pathologically alcoholic yet.
Right. Yeah. No, I was like 11 or 12 years old. And like you said, it was just one of those things, again, fitting in. My buddy wanted to do it. Let's do it. School was always a problem for me. Mm-hmm. I never liked school. I always cut school. That became that became a huge thing. Bored, not fitting in, not being comfortable. I always got picked on. I was little. I was never one of the cool kids, man. Never.
So going to school meant I was going to be traumatized in some way. It's not really about learning. It's really about navigating who's going to throw me some shit today.
Yeah.
And I had that when we were, I don't know if you had busing as part of your experience, but we had busing one year, and that was a rough year for Christopher.
Yeah. School was rough, man. School was tough. There was, throughout my middle school especially, maybe towards the end of elementary school, a lot of truancy officers were at the house. Like, I went to JCYC, Jefferson County Youth Center for the first time. I think when I was 14.
Jeez, that's an eye opener.
Yeah, right.
I mean, you're in there with bad kids.
Yeah,
right?
my bunkie at the time was in the paper for some stuff that he did, which was really terrifying. Like, I thought it was cool, but it was, when I look back at it today, like, it was really scary. And that was scary for me, being in JCYC.
Absolutely.
Right? Like, I'm 14 years old. I'm taken away from my parents. I'm in jail. And, it almost enhanced my criminal feed from there.
It's the opposite of what parents think is going to happen.
Yeah.
They think it's going to straighten you out, but because you're hanging with other kids who are further down the line, they're sharing their experience with you, right?
Yeah.
And I can't say enough about how this shapes your psyche, these early childhood moments that we talked about throughout this podcast. And there's another one, and I'm just take all the politics out of this. Just look at this as a person. But I heard this on an interview because of the movie that's coming out based on his earlier life. Donald Trump at one point apparently went to Central Park and hung out with the hoodlums, and he found a switchblade, and he was infatuated because West Side Story was in all the movie theaters at the time, and he being part of a gang and being part of the cool kids, so he took it home, and his dad caught wind of it and said, "Nope, you're going to military school." And same deal, just like boarding school or just like juvie. You're going to get shaped by that, and you can kind of see some of the results of what happened to you after that.
Yeah.
Again, this is just a natural part of a kid. This is cool. I want to be fitting with the kids. I want to try new things. And the parents just come in and go slam. And it made you worse, is what you're saying.
Yeah, for sure.
So did you come out smoking pot after that, or what was your next progression?
The next progression was pot, and it was the guy down the street that I was talking about a minute ago.
Same dude.
Is
he an instigator, or is he just a bystander that just happened to be there to provide it for her? Or was he kind of like, come on, LJ,
it was my
smoke
best
with me?
friend, man.
Okay.
It was my absolute best friend, and he was down at the house all the time, in the garage with us all the time, and I remember vividly one day my dad took him up to the store to get some rolling papers, and I can hear my dad right now saying, "If you ever get my kid smoking pot, I'm gonna fucking kill you."
Oh, shit.
Right? And the kid had a really rough life, man. A tough home life, right? So he was down at my house a lot, like to the point where he pitched a tent in my backyard and slept there for a few months.
Wow.
And in that period of that few months, he was getting some really good weed from Bardstown. This was back in the mid '90s, like when whatever. You had to go out of town to get some good weed.
The bluegrass state is known for growing a pretty good quality. We might not be on the level of Hawaii or California, but we do have our own brand here.
Yeah, and for that time period of life, it was probably the best stuff around. And I remember it like it was yesterday, man. We sat out in that tent, and he passed it to me, and I hit it, and it was off to the races, man. And there's that moment where I was like, oh, shit, what have I been missing?
Mm-hmm.
Where has this been, right? Like, I felt that ease and comfort, man. I felt that stress and that tension just immediately get released.
So good description. I'm going to ask for more, because for each of you out there, when you're going over your story, the reason you ended up in treatment and hitting a wall is because this worked better than anything you'd ever found in your life. It worked so well that I was willing to pursue it to the gates of hell. Okay? So it's not a bad thing. In many ways, we talked about in aftercare today, drugs and alcohol saved my life, because maybe I would have taken myself out if I hadn't had something to make it worth sticking around for. So that moment, I always ask my patients, LJ, and I think it's important to go over, what did it do for you? What did you like about it? And you said it gave me that sense of ease and comfort, but in your own words, like, what did you like? What did it really do for LJ?
It let me be me.
Perfect.
Let me be me.
Perfect. Tell me about that.
I was able to be happy.
Yeah.
Right? I was able to laugh at dumb stuff. I was able just to be my true, genuine, what I thought was my true, genuine self. I didn't have to worry about pleasing somebody else. I was high. I was high. I could act as goofy as I wanted to. I could do the things I truly wanted to do because I could just blame it on the weed.
And as you're yourself, these other guys are accepting you.
Yeah, for sure.
See, I took this breath after that exhale where I was like, I haven't breathed in 18 years because of my family system, right? And not only that, but I could just be, without all the acting, without all the showing off, just be you. And they're enjoying my company.
Yeah.
I was astonished.
Yeah.
Like, you're right. Where has this been my whole life?
Yeah. Yep. And that turned in, that from that point forward, from that day in the tent forward, it was smoking weed every day. at least a few times
because
a day.
it works.
Yeah,
it's
because
not a
it
bad
works.
thing.
Yeah.
And again, all you people out there suffering from guilt and shame, just take that right off you, man. If a living animal, and we're trained to do what feels good, then to repeat it because of reward and survival mechanisms, then I'm going to pursue it. If it worked, I'm going to do it again. It's not your fault. Plus, we live in a country that's pretty much cigarettes, alcohol. They were going to push something on you at some point,
Yeah.
and we just had to find the one that was LJ's best fit. And so at this point, I know there's more coming, but
yeah.
at this point, it's just marijuana, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, marijuana and drinking. Marijuana
And drinking, okay.
Yeah. And the drinking hadn't really taken off completely yet.
Right.
It was just, let's just smoke every day. And again, the guy behind me that lived behind us at the time raced cars with my dad.
That's cool, man.
He smoked pot.
What kind of track?
Figure eight out at Louisville Motor Speedway.
That's awesome,
Yeah,
man.
Louisville and Charlestown and Sportsdrome and all that stuff, man. Dad raced from fairgrounds all the way up to
Salem?
Yeah. Yeah, they had some invitationals.
Salem was one of the best racetracks around, man.
Yeah, they had some invitationals, and they had the
I
guys
think
from
it heard
Louisville
it's
come out
closed
there.
now.
It was insane, but it was always a great weekend. I knew it was planned for the weekend. You know what I mean? We had fun. But
Do you think
cool.
that might have been one of his drugs, maybe? That adrenaline?
yeah, I absolutely,
living on the edge?
absolutely,
Yeah.
100% yes.
Yeah.
And it was cool. It was cool, man. But
That would be an example of a healthy drug. If you're pursuing that for your vocation or occupation and you've got it within limits, you're not going to kill yourself doing it. Yeah, absolutely. That's a healthy drug.
yeah, and that was the plan. But
Did you want to follow in his footsteps?
Absolutely, 100% yes. And he wanted me to the point of, before he passed away in the hospital from cancer. He said, "I'm sorry I couldn't be there to see you race." And that was one of his last words. Like, shit.
Damn.
But Dad was my best friend, man. Always.
I envy you, man. That's awesome.
Yeah. So back to the drinking and the drugging, man.
So you're in high school.
Not even. I'm
Not
still
even?
in middle
Still in
school,
junior?
man.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm still in middle school. Yeah, I haven't even made it to high school yet. The weed thing took off tremendously, insane, to the point where I was already stealing from my parents to get it. Right,
Mm-hmm.
like I'm already army crawling in the bedroom, stealing $100 out of Dad's wallet and going to spend it on pot. To the point where they had to put 3 different deadbolts on their bedroom door and closet doors, and this is just off of pot.
It's like an army vet. You're doing the combat on the floor, across the floor.
And granted, man, like every time I did that, like I would feel terrible inside, but I couldn't not do it.
I've got to get it.
You know what I mean? I could not steal that money because I knew that was the only way I could get it. I was too young to get a job at this time, right? I couldn't even get a job. I didn't want to get out and cut grass. I just wanted to smoke pot.
Sure.
I didn't want to do shit to get the money except for steal it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I did, and it worked for a really long time. The weed lasted for years and years. And it turned into me and the buddy who got me smoking to go up to his girlfriend's house, and we would drink all night. We would drink all night and play Uno and Rummy, and we would play cards, and we would gamble with change. Like, we would just have fun. I thought this was life, man. This was life. I'm accepted. I'm having fun. We're doing fun things. And then it all changed, man. I don't even know at what point it changed. I guess so drinking and smoking pot together, for me, I would throw up every time, right? So it's time to pick
Get
one.
the spins.
Yeah, big time. It's
Yeah,
like, okay, it's time
me
to
too.
pick. Like, I can smoke a little bit and drink a lot, or I can drink a little bit and smoke a lot.
That's it.
But I can't do them both together completely all night.
No.
So then I found something that would help me with that, right? I was introduced to Coke.
Boom.
And it's like, okay, hold up. I can stay up later. I can drink more. Might not smoke as much, but who the hell needs weed now? You know? And that's where it went. It was, who needs... I'm drinking and I'm doing Coke all the time.
It's
now.
a cleaner high.
Yeah.
So, weed still has that little bit of dirty haze that it leaves on you, but cocaine, you're clear. Your mental clarity is...
Until the next day. If you do it in moderation, I think that might be a thing, but nothing's never enough. Nothing is ever enough for me.
So this was in high school that you found cocaine?
Nope.
Junior high?
Yeah, we're still in middle school.
Okay.
Man. We're still in 7th, 8th grade, man.
Well, where in the timeline does your father passing away fall into all this?
So Dad passed away in 2010.
Oh,
this is
okay.
well into my addiction, well
Okay.
into, throughout every stage. And I'm a trader, man. I trade one drug for the next.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't just quit anything. I'm trading weed for coke, coke for crack, crack for pills, pills for heroin, heroin for meth. Like, that is my story all the way down the line.
All right.
And that's exactly what, you know, that's what I did.
See, but
throughout
at
growing
that
up.
age, a lot of your peers are doing it, and there's no way that you could conceive what an alcoholic or an addict
No,
is, right?
absolutely not. I saw the guy across the street having parties and girls and flashy lights and all the cool cars and all these things, all these people. I mean, he would have 20, 30 people at his house, and his mom was in there the whole time, right? Like, she'd be in the basement sleeping, and he's having these parties, and I'm like, holy shit. I'm 16 years old at this time. And I wanted that. I wanted that attention. I'm just hanging out with one guy who's just like me. We're both loners. We don't do anything with anybody except for ourselves. And it's getting boring, right? It's not exciting anymore. The weed's getting old. It's just, okay, we go down to the creek, we smoke some pot, we come back, we play Nintendo. This shit's getting boring.
Yeah.
What are they doing, right? And then that's when I was introduced, that's when I really got introduced to coke and LSD and mushrooms and all the hallucinogens was in that time period, like between 16 and 18. Is when I was introduced to that. And again, man, I took off with those things. You know, if one makes me feel this way, I've always been the underdog. I've always been the little guy, the shrimp, the short guy, the one who can't handle anything. You can't be picked because you're too little, you're too weak. Let me show you what I can do with this, right? You're taking 2, I want to take 4. You know, and that's what I did. That's what I did, to the point where I didn't think I was going to come back a couple times.
You were what we used to call the grunt, which would be the guinea pig that was willing to do more than anybody, and we would just watch you for the rest of the night to see what happened.
Man. Absolutely. But again, I was too, I don't want to say ashamed or embarrassed, but once I got to that point where it's like, oh shit, I'm either going to puke or die, I leave. I leave. I say, okay, I'm getting tired, and I walk out the door. Okay. Right? I don't want to puke in front of you, because then you're going to talk about me. You're going to laugh at me. I've been laughed at forever. I don't want to be laughed at anymore.
So with all this going on, did you graduate high school?
I did not.
Okay, I was going to say that would be a phenomenal achievement if you had.
I did not, but I did go through, got my GED and all that stuff.
Hell yeah, hell yeah.
So we'll jump up to there. When I was 18, I had my first daughter.
Okay.
By this time, I was a full-blown crack addict.
So it progressed quickly from coke to crack real fast.
Yeah, insane, man.
Okay.
Insane. I got tired of nosebleeds. I got tired of my nose bleeding, and I got tired of rubbing my nose every time I was around somebody and people looking at me all funny, so I decided that crack was a better way. I didn't have to worry about that.
That's such a step up, right? That drug is just like...
Yeah. And these are all I'll never do that, right? I'll never smoke crack. I'll never...
Until we do it the first time.
Yeah, man. And it's like,
the problem is the intensity, right? It rivals the intensity of anything. And then each drug you go to that's heavier will hit that point, what your so-called bliss point, which gets raised, because your dopamine receptors are being deregulated. So I'm trying to chase that bliss point again. And that thing, it doesn't last long, but for the time it lasts, I know I wouldn't be here alive if that had been an option back in the day, because I was doing freebase.
Yeah.
So dangerous. That's all I would say. Dangerous for an alcoholic addict, for sure.
Yeah, it was bad. And then I guess that time period is really when my criminal behavior.
That's what I was going to say. Here we go. Because I was going to ask you, when did you start running and gunning? Because I could feel it was coming.
Yeah, between coke and crack, man, that's when it went really insane. That's when the drug really grabbed a hold of me, and like you put it had that controller. And I was, I was being controlled by this thing, and I would do whatever it took. And it went from stealing a couple $100 from my parents to breaking into houses and robbing stores and trying to rob drug dealers and just doing all the whatever it takes to get my next fix.
What would you say was your main MO that would pay off the most? Were you just boosting?
Burglars, houses.
Burglary houses?
Houses, yep, absolutely.
That's risky behavior, man. Somebody might have a gun when you walk in there.
That's not what I was thinking about.
I know.
I was thinking about what I can put in this pillowcase and what I can take to the pawn shop or to the dope man and get some money or some dope.
Dan wasn't thinking about that either, so that's okay. We're not thinking about the gun. We're thinking about the prize. That's what we're thinking about.
Absolutely. And there's a couple times that...
Now, did anybody intervene at this point and say to you, LJ, what are you doing, man?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. My parents were absolutely on top of me, man.
Really?
Yeah. By this point, me and Dad were having beers together. So they would let me and my brother was smoking pot by this time too. I got him out for the first time. You know, he was sitting in my house at 8 years old, and I handed him a bowl so I could make it okay for me, right? He can't stay in my house all weekend, and I can't not smoke pot, right? So I got him smoking weed. Well, I smoked weed with him for the first time, and his progressed as well. But he was smoking pot at the time. I was drinking and smoking pot and doing whatever the hell else I wanted to do at the time. So mom and dad would sit back in their room and let us, their thing, because this is how they were brought up, just do it at the house so we know you're safe.
Sure.
You're not out there killing yourself. Do it at home, right? So all our friends would come over and we would all get high and drunk in the house. And it was okay. Until it wasn't. And I made it not okay by acting an idiot and not thinking about anything and just doing what I wanted to do. It's that self-will run riot.
Mm-hmm. But I was wondering, this would be a great public service for several of our listeners, that I get many people in group who are haunted by guilt because they started somebody, and usually a relative or brother or sister, on drugs. And I try to explain to them that, first off, in our society, they would have tried something at some point, no matter what if you were even alive, they still would have done that. Yeah. And secondly, if their disease takes off from there, that's their biology, and that was pre-wired before you even knew they had that. So it's not your responsibility for that. Have you been able to make peace with that? And because so many of my patients are like a little torn up, that they think that everything that's happened to their brother or whatever is their fault. And I'm like, no, you're not God. There's no way you can control their path like that. Yeah. They would have found it eventually.
Yeah, I was, man. I was one of those people for a long, long time. Like I said, I smoked weed with him for the first time. I did coke with him for the first time. Mm. Ate mushrooms with him for the first time.
But you didn't force him down his throat.
But I did not. You're right. I did not force him down his throat. But that guilt was still on me. Right. Like, what did I do to my brother? You know, we're robbing houses together at this point. You know, like we're going down. I'm dragging him along we're dragging each other with each other down this road of disaster, man. He's going to jail. I'm going to jail. We're robbing houses. We're robbing people. We're doing horrible things to people together, and there was those moments of clarity. It's like, damn, what have I done? You know?
Do you have one moment that would sum up your criminal endeavors that just strikes out in your story that haunts you? Like, oh, I can't believe I did that. I know one of my sponsees didn't carjack, but stole this woman's money at an ATM one night, and she was just a young girl, and he could tell that the minute he stuck the gun in her face, he fucked her for life. He just knew from the look in her eyes he had just done something that he could maybe never make right. And do you have a night where you just did something that's just like, what the hell? This is not me. Because, you know, our stories are great. We can say, I did all this. But if there's one night where I shouldn't have done this, but I did it.
You know.
I don't want to incriminate you.
No, yeah.
But, you know.
With 37 felonies and a list of misdemeanors that I can't even begin to count.
You lost
I
track.
cannot put my finger on any particular one, man.
Okay, fair enough.
All a lot.
Fair enough.
There's a lot. Like I said, man, it went from assaults to robberies to.
Did you have an anger? Did you have an anger inside you that was left over from childhood?
I had a horrible
stuff?
Demon inside of me.
Did you?
I had a horrible demon inside of me.
Talk to the listeners about that. That might help them, because man, a lot of guys are carrying that rage, and they're looking for something to set it off, and you know they don't know what else to do with it.
Yeah,
but let it go. You know, sometimes
anything would set it off. It didn't matter what it was. I couldn't tell you how many pickets in my parents' privacy fence that we had to replace, because I would go out there and either slam my foot through it or punch through everything, or it got to the point where we didn't have doors in my bedroom. My bedroom, bathroom door, closet doors, front door. They were all just sheets for the longest time, because Dad said he's tired of fucking replacing doors. I'm just going to tear them down, you know. And it was, I don't know why it was. There's no real reason. There's no real reason that I was like that. It was just anger, just this horrible anger inside of me that I could not control unless I hit something.
Well, the ultimate reason, obviously beyond the childhood stuff we talked about, is this idea that I'm suffering, but I don't know what else to do with my pain, and we don't have any good tools to deal with it. And everybody around us is actually triggering us. They think they're helping us, but they're saying the wrong thing. So that I did more damage with my mouth than I did with my fists, and I said things I could never take back. But thank God for the amends process. We'll clean that up.
That's right.
But I think just with your record alone, to which you have great news about that later in the podcast, that speaks volumes about your professional level. So I think, I want to say what your favorite drug is, but I'm leaning towards, did you do your meth period?
So that was the last phase of my development.
And would you call that your very, very favorite, or was it still cocaine?
No, it was pills. It was opiates.
Oh,
Opiates
okay.
was my
We got
absolute
that too.
favorite, man. My absolute diehard
So you came
favorite.
along right in that phase when Oxycontin and all those
I
were
loved it. Yep, I absolutely loved it, man.
So
the first
funny.
Oxycontin I bought actually was with a cold check.
Really?
I wrote the drug dealer a cold check.
That's brave.
It's just terrible.
That's very
right?
brave.
It's insane. But it was an Oxy 20. I remember it, man, and I puked I puked my guts out after I did that. But I absolutely loved that feeling of not being here but still being here. It took me outside myself for the first time, man, and that tingle that I got from snorting that pill was just insane. It was nothing like it.
I think that's a great way to describe it. Take me out of myself, because Bill says in the big book that sense of ease and comfort. Alcoholics will get that, but we get that with other substances. That I can just, all my anger, all my life problems, all my stuff that I have to carry, that knot in my gut, just set it aside. I can go just be over here for a while. That's miracle stuff right there. And so if those of you that haven't done that in your life, that's why we do it, because it works better than anything else.
For sure. All
right, now we got to speed up and get to some major consequences. Did you go to prison for a time?
I went to prison 4 times.
Okay. What was the worst experience?
All of them.
Spoken like a true
None
veteran.
of them were
That
fun.
is spoken like a true convict. Good for you.
But again, I went 4 times. I didn't learn anything at all, except for how to try to manipulate better, how to get out and do what I want to do better, so I didn't come back to prison. My first time to prison was for a string of burglaries and a trafficking case that I caught in 2011. That was actually my first felony that I was charged with, and that was right after my dad passed away. My dad passed away March 1st, 2010, sorry. He passed away March 1st, 2010, and after that, I really hit that big red button. I didn't give a shit if I lived or died at this point. I didn't care who I hurt in my path. I did not care about anything at all.
So
in
your
life.
heart had been broken.
I was destroyed.
It was over.
My dad's gone. I was destroyed.
A good part of your spirit died with your dad.
Yeah, I mean, like I said earlier, man, when they saw me falling off the rails a little bit, Dad would always grab a 22-ounce beer and we'd sit on the tailgate of his truck and talk. I'd cry to him, he'd beg me to talk to him, and he was there for me, and I lost that. Not that I ever used it, but I lost it. I lost that comfort. You know what I mean? And I caught my first trafficking case. I had 124 Opanas in a sock in the back of my car.
Wow.
And the 2 girls I was with were on parole for manufacturing meth, and I hadn't tried meth yet. They were on parole for manufacturing meth, so they weren't supposed to be around each other. So when the police pulled us over, they harassed us, they questioned us. They had 2 dogs searching the car, and they could not find these pills, right? And I knew that. I knew the dogs couldn't smell the pills. So they got the one girl, they got her friend off to the side, and they said, well, you know what? If you don't tell us where this dope is, we're taking both of you to jail, and we're revoking your parole. And this girl's got like 15 years on the shelf or something. She was going to do all her time, she thought. So she immediately told them. They went straight to the car, got it, beat me and my brother both up. They beat the hell out of us. We went to jail so bloody and dirty. It was horrible.
Damn. Did you mouth off at him?
We were laughing the whole time. The girl that I was with at the time, we had just stopped at Kroger at Taylor at the corner of the store, and we traded some pills for some meth for her. And as I'm pulling out at Kroger, 7 police pulled up behind us, and their lights were on. I'm like, I'm not pulling over until you eat this dope. Like, I'm not getting trouble. They can't smell my pills. They're gonna catch us with it. So she eats this bag, and she's on the side of the road just laughing. Right, like 30 minutes into this police search, like she's losing her shit and she's just rolling, and I'm like, oh my god, we're all going to jail. So they end up finding the pills, man, and beat us up. And my first, they got me for the trafficking and a list of burglaries and a couple armed robberies.
Okay.
My first offer was 27 years in prison, and again, that wasn't enough. That wasn't enough for me. I sat in jail for 18, 19 months or whatever fighting this case. Ended up getting off with a smack on the wrist, basically. I had 10 years of parole. I went to prison for 6 months after that. I got shock probation, so I got out of prison after 6 months. I had 10 years parole with 10 years on the shelf is what my final deal was.
It's a tight
right?
deal.
Okay, cool. I can do this,
Mm-hmm.
right? But again, wasn't enough. I was not ready to quit.
So there begins the part of our story, and we don't want to do a drunk-a-log, but there becomes what the Healing Place calls lather, rinse, repeat.
Yeah.
Which, now that I'm in the lifestyle, now that I'm in the system, I'm going to keep showing up in the system. Let's get to the question about where AA was first introduced into your life, and maybe you might have thought, am I one of these guys, what's called an alcoholic or an addict?
AA was introduced probably 18 to 20-ish in my years 18 to 20-ish.
But at that age,
I was not ready.
At that age,
Yeah,
it's a joke.
It was an absolute joke.
There's
Man.
those
I didn't
old
get
people talking about whatever.
Yeah.
I don't relate
Yeah,
to
they're
any of
crying
that.
about their problems.
Yeah.
And they're all in here. They're not really like this outside of this meeting and all the things, man. So I caught felony after felony, right?
Yeah.
I was fighting these cases, and I'm still catching felonies while I'm fighting felony cases. And they finally got tired of it and locked me up. This was a process, man. This was a whole thing, a revolving door for years, from 2011 till 2018. It was a revolving door. Fighting cases, going back to prison while I'm fighting cases, back to prison, there was a whole thing, man.
We have a word for that in recovery. It's called unmanageability.
Absolute unmanageability.
And it's total chaos. And my patients coming in a group just don't understand. Why is this all happening to me? It's like you are the number one most common denominator in this story of everything that's happening to you. So maybe you need to change.
Yeah.
So again, for the sake of time, let's get ahead to the point where you might have gotten around the corner to say, what's this group about? And I'm wondering if it wasn't just till you got to the VOA, because that's when I saw that change in you myself.
It absolutely was.
All right, so what year was that?
It was 2018.
Okay, great.
September. So I went to jail for the last time. I guess the end of August of 2018 because I had stayed up for weeks and doing meth and did not go to my parole officer. So he left a note on my door and said, "You better come here tomorrow. I'm coming to you." So I went there knowing I was going to drop dirty. I was going to pee dirty. No way I was not. So I went there and they changed my parole officer. It was a different guy. And he was not going to be like the other guy and say, "Okay, go ahead. We're not going to drop you. You don't have to show me a paycheck stub. Just leave. See me next month." This guy was like, "Okay, I want your paycheck stub. I want you to pee in this cup and we're going to do it now." And I didn't. I played that poor pity me card until 4:30. And they finally got tired of sitting there waiting for me and locked my ass up.
I can't piss.
Yeah.
I can't piss.
Oh, it was to the
point. My patients don't understand when they play that game, and the game of showing up at the water fountain every 5 seconds, because my office is kitty corner to it. And I just look at them and shake my head and said, "I know you're dirty. Just tell me you're dirty."
Yeah.
The minute you're coming for a pee test, you're going to tell me you can't pee.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
that's just a guilt card you just played right there in front of the counselor.
Yeah. I told him to call an ambulance. I told him to take me to the hospital because there's something wrong with me. I don't know. The whole thing. I tried my best. Yeah. I tried my best, and they were not hearing any of it. The help they got me was a pair of handcuffs in jail.
What is... you went from there, but you got in the VOA eventually. So what is the VOA exactly for people who don't know what it is?
Volunteers of America. It's a recovery center here in Louisville. At the time was a 6-month program of intense IOP, intense outpatient, man. It was work the steps, go to meetings, do IOP 3 times a week for 4 hours at a time or 5 hours at a time. Get a job. It was learning responsibilities. It was learning how to live life, man. And that's where I was introduced to AA. Not that I wanted to, because I didn't. I did it so they wouldn't look at me. So the guys in there wouldn't look at me until it clicked. It's the first time I really went to a meeting and sat down and actually paid attention to the meeting, right? Because again, I wanted the people who ran the VOA to see me paying attention, so they wouldn't look at me if I decided that I wanted to go act a fool again. Thank God I didn't. That fake it till you make it thing, it worked. It worked for that 6 months that I was in there, man. I finally got a little bit of a grip on AA. I got a little bit of a grip that I was an alcoholic, that I had a problem. I wasn't an alcoholic yet. I had a problem, right? AA wasn't going to work for me because I'm not an alcoholic. I'm a drug addict. I'm okay to admit that because I'm not an alcoholic. Still trying to manipulate my way through life. October 13th, 2018 is the day I absolutely surrendered. The day that I absolutely surrendered the idea that I was an alcoholic and I needed help.
What maybe clicked for you? There's a lot of different angles to step one. And, you know, when they're talking about powerlessness, that's offensive to anybody, especially an alcoholic or an addict.
Yeah.
But the idea that when I use, I lose control because I always want more, that made sense to me. What made sense to you?
The guys at the VOA
Yeah.
that were just like me. The ones that were running the place that were just like me. They had eaten out of dumpsters. They slept on park benches. I couldn't lie to them. I couldn't manipulate them. They knew the game. They knew the ropes. And they called me on my stuff every time. And that's what it took for me. Not a guy with a gun and a badge. Somebody who was just like me to tell me that I had a problem.
Made it easier to listen to because this is one of my peers. This is somebody who's been where I've been.
Yep.
I hear that a lot from people I work with who've been in the prison system. That makes them feel more comfortable to know that you have some experience with that.
Yeah.
So even soldiers are like that. They want to know if somebody's been in the military, it's easier for them to work with. This is a very powerful moment for you. And I agree, and I had that same experience. I was a man child when I came in. I didn't know how to be a man or how to be responsible. And I tell my patients, and they just don't believe me. You know, if you give me a choice to do the right thing or the wrong thing, back then I would just naturally done the wrong thing and not known the difference. But growing up, I want to just touch on that for a second. That's a big part, and it sounds like those men in there really did role model for you about how to carry yourself as a better man in this world than the one you were at the time, right?
Yeah, for sure.
That's inspiring.
Yeah, if nothing else, it was for the time in there, right? Because still, even after that 6 months, like I did all the things in the VOA. I got a sponsor. I went to meetings. I did all the things they wanted me to do that I was supposed to do.
Had you done all the steps yet?
I had not.
Okay.
But I did get a sponsor. We did go through the steps. I did do a 5th step with him in the VOA. It wasn't a thorough 5th step at all, by any means. When I got out, I still didn't know if I wanted to be sober. Right? Even after hitting the bricks, doing the book, doing everything, I still didn't know. But my girlfriend at the time was sober, right? She ended up getting sober a few months before I did. And she was going to meetings, so I would go to meetings just to appease her, right? And then eventually that's just stuck, and it became life.
You know what I get to hear as a counselor? If you want to say a shout out to Jennifer, I hear these guys and the gals that have angels that come into their life.
Oh, she absolutely
to
was.
save your life.
Absolutely was.
That's
man.
a beautiful story.
We met getting drugs. You know, I was at somebody's house getting drugs, and she pulled up, and she hasn't left since. Right? Like, we got high together for a few months, and then she decided she's going to get sober, and I told her I would, and we pretended sober.
Pretend sober is a hard state to be in.
Yeah, I pretended sober for 3 months until I went to jail and went to the VOA. But when I got out, man, she was sober, and she was really doing the deal. Like, she was doing meetings, she was doing the steps, she was doing the things, man.
She made you want to be a better man.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, she absolutely did.
Absolutely did. So this is beautiful because this kind of segues into your introduction to TSSR and how you met us, the spiritual underground. So talk about that, because I think one of the biggest facets, and if any of y'all don't go to an all-male meeting or an all-female meeting, our females in town, our ladies are going on retreat this weekend, and your wife's going to be there.
Absolutely.
And they're going to have a hell of a time, and I'm excited for them, and I can't wait to get videos and hear all about it. But this idea of bonding with our same sex that we didn't get when we were younger, so they can role model for each other, you know, how to best act as the best version of ourselves we could be. We offer that at Spiritual Underground, and you got that at VOA when you were there. So talk about that transition when you came into meeting us and getting into all this before you even asked me to sponsor you.
Man, okay, so the first time I was introduced to Spiritual Underground, it was from a guy through the Ice House. I met him while I was in the VOA, and he kept pressuring me to go to his home group, and I finally did. And I met Dan for the first time, right? And the first time I went in there, I guess he introduced, I don't remember. I guess we introduced or whatever, and I kind of laid low from Spiritual Underground for a few months. And then I got home from the VOA, and then I decided for whatever reason to go try the spiritual underground again. And Dan met me at the door, shook my hand. Hey, LJ, I'm glad you made it back, and gave me a hug. And that's a huge part of my story. It changed the trajectory of the way I feel about AA. It really, truly did, man.
Do you remember that, Dan?
Yeah, I do. I mean, Absolutely. It didn't impact me as much because I just had seen a guy who had been with us before, and I had, this gift that God has given me on recognizing faces and remembering names. I remembered when he first come in, and then we didn't see him for a while. And how often does that happen?
A lot.
All the time.
Right.
And then there he was back, and it wasn't that I was doing anything other than, I try to shake every new man's hand that walks in the door, and I know if you're new or not. And that's all I was really doing the first time with LJ, and I remembered his name when he came back the next time. Only reason I kind of remember it is because LJ's told me this story a number of times, and that's how I remember it. I don't remember. It was nothing, I was just doing what I do.
There you go. That's what my old sponsor Burns used to call the miracle in the ordinary. Something that was just a common interaction you would do for any person coming back, and in your life made a monumental difference.
Huge difference.
All right, so you come in with these crazy guys, and you're thinking what?
Y'all are insane.
Right, we're like the VOA on steroids, man.
You're hugging, you're telling each other you love each other. Y'all are laughing,
talking real shit,
talking
getting
about
honest in there,
right? Yeah.
You're going. You're not supposed to talk about that in public. What are you doing?
Yeah, man. It was to the I would raise my hand to share, and before the guy taking names could look at me, I would yank my hand down real quick because I was still scared.
That's right. How you do that.
Because I didn't know what to share. I wasn't where you guys are, right? I didn't think you all would. I thought y'all would laugh at me and all the things that I dealt with through childhood, man. And it was scary. It was scary. The energy in there was scary at first, but it absolutely is the reason that I stay. It's the absolute reason that I stayed there, man.
Because it was something different.
Because it was something different, and I was accepted. I was accepted.
I remember that. I remember after the
dirt.
Like in the conversations in the parking lot after the meeting.
Yeah,
you were kind of the hanger on the periphery, and
Absolutely.
we would bring you in and say, "Come on, man, talk to us."
Absolutely was. I absolutely was, man.
So how the hell did we end up working together? I remember it was down at the church downtown through TSSR. Right?
Again, Dan.
Okay.
Again, Dan.
Thank you, Dan.
Yeah, he was posting saw a post on Facebook with the little wooden tokens, and I was like, I want some of those tokens, right? How do I get those? And I swear to you, man, that's exactly the only reason that I went to TSSR the first time was to get one of those wooden tokens because it was cool and it was different.
Nice.
And not everybody has them, but I got one.
This is Dan's form of service work of many, including producing this podcast, that he makes personalized, tokens for people on their birthdays. And he also did a lot of our tokens for TSSR to begin, made out of wood and handcrafted. You cannot get that anywhere else.
Absolutely.
So thank you for that, Dan.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, me and Jennifer went to TSSR.
And you come in and you see me and you're like, who's this guy?
Yeah, right. Well, in the meetings when you would share, man, I would put my head down. It's like, oh my God,
I wish you would shut up. This guy, he's on fire.
Yeah, he's talking all this stuff about somebody's gonna die if they don't stay. Like all the things.
Is he for real? Man, I know he's using.
It had to be. You have to be one of these crazy guys because there's no way that you really are like that, right? And I was not ready to hear it, man. I wasn't ready to hear it for my first year plus. I wasn't ready to hear it.
I'm laughing not at our personal story. I'm laughing because this is the journey for everyone when you meet the teacher you're supposed to work with.
Yeah.
You will spit on them. You will curse them. You will criticize them. You'll put them down. You'll laugh at them. And then eventually you'll ask them if they'll work with you.
Yep.
It's kind of the Buddhist way. It's an old story about that the monk doesn't understand the teacher right in front of them.
Yeah. So at when I was introduced to TSSR,
which was 12-step spiritual recovery. It's our effort in Louisville to open up groups for everybody, which is going to become the I Am 1-2 movement when the book is finished soon. And we want to spread this nationwide. We want to spread this worldwide. We want everybody to have the option to go to a meeting without labels.
Yeah.
We don't have to say alcoholic and addict. We say I am 1-2. And your brother, your sister, your neighbor, your cousin, anybody, your dog can come and learn about the 12 steps because these 12 steps will save this world. I'm convinced of it.
Yeah.
Nothing else changes people like this program does.
No, absolutely.
And especially the worst. Like, it changes convicts, like hardened core people,
Yeah.
into the best version of themselves they could be.
Yeah,
All right,
absolutely.
so we decide we're going to work. And I do remember this point where we start working in my car after the meeting. And it was freezing, I think. It was winter, right?
It was cold.
Yeah, and I don't know. I always think I see guys crawling into my car, but for you, that just seems appropriate. You were just like, coming
Again, man, I didn't know if I wanted
you
to
put
be
in
sober.
you put on a good face. I'm not saying you were rude or that you didn't look like you were there because you wanted to be, but I don't know. I think you were one of my guys. I was wondering whether or not you were really serious.
Well, when we first met, when we first started working the steps, I had a sponsor from the VOA that had gotten me through most of the 12 steps, right? And I hit my 11 months, and then I hit that wall of, damn, do I really want this or not? Because I don't have what you guys got in Spiritual Underground. I don't have that. And that's when TSSR was kind of introduced to, or when I was introduced to TSSR, and that's when we met, right? And I still didn't know at that time if I wanted to be sober or not, but I wanted the happiness that everybody else had, man. I wanted just to be comfortable with me because y'all were. And that's, I guess that's when we started working together, and I fumbled through the steps at first, I definitely did. But things started happening.
I think you did fine. Well, let me back up on that. But real quick for everybody else, we actually have TSSR meetings that have Zoom capability with them. So there's one on Thursday nights for co-ed, and there's one on Tuesday nights just for the ladies. So if you'd like to find out about that for yourself, just go to 12stepspiritualrecovery.com. You have to spell out the words because TSSR, they wanted $35,000 for that. So it's 12stepspiritualrecovery.com, and you can get the meeting schedule on there and join them on Zoom. I remember pumping you up. I don't know why I felt like you needed that, but I feel like I was feeding you potato chips about the juice, about what's possible for your life. Do you remember any of that?
I do, and I didn't believe a damn word.
I know, yeah, they usually don't. Dan didn't believe it either.
And it has all come true plus some. The rewards, the miracles, the whatever I've gotten from doing this work, from thoroughly doing this work and doing it honestly. Like, for the first time ever doing it honestly, like, the rewards are insane.
Well, we're going to touch on a few of those before we wrap it up here because these are just monumentally inspiring things.
Yeah.
So, first of all, your marriage, if you want to talk about that,
Yeah.
and then getting your $275,000 house that's like, this is a guy that's robbing homes. How's he going to get his own place? Like, all these things started falling in your lap, and I just get so much pleasure of watching that happen for people.
Well, throughout the madness, I always had things, but they were my mom and dad's things. So I didn't have a house to sell to get this money. Like, things just happened once I got sober and started doing the work. Like, things just started working out. The credit got a little better, so we were able to apply, and all the things. The girl Jennifer, we ended up getting married in Hawaii.
Isn't that awesome?
It's insane. I never thought that, right? Like, I never thought I'd go to Hawaii, much less be married to somebody who actually wants to be with me, right? Like, that's the kicker. Like, we want to be with each other, and that's not normal
like
for me.
a true partnership.
Yeah.
That's the way I look at y'all. You have a good,
and we
good
build each other
partnership.
up, man. When one of us falls short, the other one's there to pick the other one up. It's just, it works. It
And
works,
the other
man.
one that I get a big joy out of is we talk about passing this on to the next generations just by our example.
Yeah.
And the way this program has unified your family with your stepkids and your kids. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely, man. So I've got 3 daughters. Jennifer has a daughter and a son. And Travis, her son, we've always been okay. Right, it's Michaela, it's the daughter that we've always struggled with the relationship, and she's got her own issues, her own demons or whatever. She's not an alcoholic, she's not an addict. She just deals with her own mental things, and it makes it hard for her to trust. Jennifer and I have been together for a little over 6 years now, and finally, every night texting Michaela. They've all the kids got their own homes now. They've all moved out and they're doing their own thing. They're in the military, they're in college, they're doing their own thing, and that's because we're doing the right thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They're seeing us go through this life doing the right things, and they decided, okay, that's way better than what we used to do. Let's do this. So they did, and they're their own people now. And
So what I saw was, when we're in our madness, the children are left to fend for themselves. And that happened to me too. Just figure it out on your own, right?
Yeah.
So that causes you to go in all kinds of directions, and usually bad directions.
Sure.
As you guys were getting better as a pair, I'm going to give Jennifer full credit here. I think it was both of y'all.
Yeah.
and you held that center. I watched all your family assemble around that. Now, it was a rocky process. Let's be honest.
It was insane.
We
for a
had
while.
guns and cops being called and all kinds of fun phone calls over the period. That's just part of the deal. But over time, to see your daughter join the military and all this stuff, I mean, you just back and you go, how's that possible?
Yeah.
How's it possible that because I work some tools to better me, it betters my family in that degree? That's just nothing short of miraculous.
For sure. Well, Michaela, like I said, she's dealing with her own mental things, and she's to the point she's going to therapy now. She's got a luxury apartment that she rents. You know, like
Hell yeah.
she's had a job for almost 3 years now at the same place. She's making better money than I'm making.
No kidding. That's awesome.
She's doing great, and she texted me the other night and gave me this huge long message about how she doesn't say it enough, but how she truly feels. And, you know, she called me dad, and like, it's all these things. It's the miracles of the program, man. That's doing the steps, right? Like, I had to do work. I had to do pen and paper work on Michaela and my relationship, time after time again. Like 4, 5, 6, 10 steps I had to do, or I got to do with her, and I thought none of them were going to work, right? To the point where it's like, this shit doesn't work. It doesn't work. But it's not on my timing, and I had to understand
It's never on
that.
my timing.
With all the things I've gone through, all the hot water heater, the kids getting shot at, it's not my timing. It's not. And if I just let go of this shit, if I just let it go and let God,
Let it go and tend my side of the street.
it's fine.
Let me take care of my side of the street, and the rest of it will work out.
It's fine.
Let God do the God, and LJ do the LJ.
Yep.
But the cool thing was LJ shared that text that his daughter sent to him right before his sobriety anniversary celebration, and he shared it at the meeting. I got to tell you, a lot of my patients gave me feedback that that broke their heart in a good way. That inspired them, like, wow, that man could not only have that happen in his life, but also be brave enough to get up there and show his emotions and do all that. That was extremely attractive representation of recovery you put out there that night. So thank you for sharing that with the group.
That was just practicing what I've been taught. Patience. I was patient with her. I let God do the Godding.
Right.
I'm just going to do my part and not push the boundaries or not do any of that. Just do my part and make her feel as comfortable as I can. And it paid off. It took 6 years.
And if you had pushed it, it wouldn't have worked.
Absolutely
That's the fixed
not.
management control never works. You got to let people have their process.
Yeah.
So the main thing I wanted to talk about is a clincher, and this is kind of like the big finish, because this is a hell of a story. Recently, LJ found out he had recent charges. And this sometimes happens in recovery. Life does not cooperate with us. Life is life, and it's going to show up. But if I'm working my tools and I have my support system, I'm telling you, we can walk through any fire. I've done it myself. I've been around 40 years, and I say that not to pout off, it's 40 years. No, I'm saying 40 years of freaking life on this freaking planet, a lot of freaking shit has happened. And I stayed sober through it, through these tools. So I want the people to hear this, to get inspired that no matter what hits you, you can listen to your sponsor, even if you don't believe them, and you can do what they tell you to do, even if you're scared to death, and come out the other end smelling like a fucking rose, where you're like, I can't believe that happened. Everything worked out perfectly. Yeah. So take me from the moment when you got the phone call from the detective, which if you've heard those terms and you've been there, you got a little chill down your spine right there. Yeah. When the detective calls you out of the blue, Mr. Miller.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I was on my way to Spiritual Underground. I was on my way to home group. It was a Tuesday night. I was dropping Jennifer off at one of her sponsees, and I was going to go to our meeting. And she gets a phone call. It was June. It was in, I don't know what date. It was June of this year. She gets a phone call on her phone, and it said Jeffersontown. And I was, answer it. We don't run from shit. They don't run from bill collector. We don't have that problem. Answer the phone. So she answered, and I hear this guy over the phone. Hey, this is Detective so-and-so. I'm looking for Lincoln Miller and all these. I'm like, okay. So I get the phone, and I'm, hello, what's up, buddy? What's going on?
That's a sobriety answer, by
yeah,
the way.
like, what's going on, man? The
other answer would have been, out the door.
I'm sober, dude. Like, I haven't done anything in almost 6 years at this point. Like, what's going on?
Hey, buddy.
Yeah, hey,
That's
buddy,
awesome.
what's up? And he proceeds to tell me that my name came across his desk, and there's a citation from 2017, from the end of 2017. That's right before I got sober. To come into his office, and we need to have a discussion. And at that point, I was out. I was out. Right?
Cuffs are going on.
Yeah, I was out at this point. Flight kicked in. Right, criminal, the not sober, all the old thoughts and behavior, all that stuff kicked in for a brief second, man. Like, okay, maybe sometime. And I immediately started manipulating this cop, right? Well, I've got my meeting. I'm trying to throw AA out there too, right? I'm trying to make it work for me. I've got my AA meeting at this time to this time. What's your hours? And he told me his hours, and I was like, well, that's not going to work for me because I got work and all the things. I sat at my meeting. So when I dropped Jennifer off, I sat at the end of the neighborhood and I said a prayer. I stopped the car and I said a prayer. God, I don't know what's going to happen with this, but you got to help me. What do I do? Do I run? Do I call him back? What do I do? And I went to the meeting. I was not connected at that meeting at all. I was definitely in my head. Thinking about, okay, well, what if I run? It's only a matter of time before I'm back out on the streets or dead.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
it's only a matter of time. I'm going to go to jail 100% facts if I don't die first. Right? So I don't really want to do that, but it's an option. It's an option. After the meeting, man, I called this cop back and I said, look, dude, what's going on, man? You know, I'm a criminal, I'm a convict, you're a cop. I don't come to you. What's up? If you're going to lock me up, just tell me now so I can grab my white shirt and I can come down there and see you.
Very fair.
You know, let's just do it.
Fair terms right there.
And he proceeded to tell me he gave me his word, he's not going to lock me up. And I battled that for, a couple hours, talking to him back and forth, phone call after phone call. Like, you didn't tell me that your partner wasn't going to lock me up, though. Right? Like, all these things, because he didn't. He said, I give you my word. But I'm like, yeah, well, your partner might. So I was still scared to go in there, man. I would get his voicemail and I'd hang up and I'd be like, okay, God, I did my part. I called him. He called me back at about 10 o'clock that night. And it was raining. I had one of my sponsees on the phone. I put the phone on mute and put him in my pocket. I'm like, look, if you're staying in my pocket while I go in this police station to supposedly sign a citation, I walk in, they lock the doors behind me, and I thought it was over. I thought it was over. So I get this citation, I sign it, and it's all it is a citation at this point. First time I went to court for it, it was for an $8,000 lawnmower that I had stolen before I got sober and sold it. And apparently that lawnmower had made it back to the place I stole it from. The guy he was taking it back for maintenance, and he told them where he got it from. And then that's where my name comes up, and that's where the detectives come in. And that's when I called you. I didn't know what the hell to do, man. I was absolutely terrified. Okay, this is a Class C felony. I'm going through the process of getting my record expunged, and it's working. I'm getting felonies expunged left and right? And here's another Class C felony that I could possibly face up to 10 years in prison over. And I'm sober. And this sucks, right?
And I know the two things that I basically said to you were not the things you wanted to hear.
Absolutely not.
Number one, I think I remember saying is that why would God drop you now when you've been doing the right thing? There's no reason for you to go to jail. It's not going to happen. And the second thing was maybe something really juicy and good is meant to come out of this if you'll just take the next right step.
That's the one that
you're supposed to do.
Right, and I didn't really want to hear that one because the next step possibly meant going back to prison.
Yeah, or at least being locked up overnight.
And we had that conversation, and it was like, okay, maybe he wants you to use you in there for something. I'm like, yeah, great, but I don't want to go in there, right? I'm going to avoid that at all cost. This is in June.
LJ was terrified, and I understand. I've been in that situation before.
It's my MO.
And it's normal to be terrified.
Yeah, it's my whole record is stealing stuff.
Right.
Like, there's no way they're going to give any leniency on this.
Right.
I was
Priors
scared.
are never good.
So I go to court in August, and they say I got to come up with this money before my next court date, which is like 5 weeks out or whatever, and it's $8,000. I live paycheck to paycheck. It was just this whole array of things. Taylor was just getting ready to ship out for the Army. Like, all these things were happening financially that I had to keep putting whatever little extra money I had into. And there's no way I can come up with $8,000 before I go to court.
Pause in the story. There's no way that I can come up.
Sure.
So you talked to me,
right.
And I said, you're right. This is where we need higher power.
Yeah.
The higher power in the recovery is to do for me the things I can't do for myself.
Yeah.
And if I need $8 freaking grand to stay out of prison so I can be of service to him as to carry the message and maybe tell a story one day that this worked to help somebody else work it.
Yep.
God will keep you out of prison.
Yep.
So, and I know you didn't want to hear that.
No. And that fear and that whatever feeling, that horrible feeling inside of me lasted for weeks until I finally said, you know what, God, this is you, man.
You let go.
Like, whatever it is.
You surrendered.
And I kept hearing it from you time after time, polo after polo, God's going to use you for this. Just trust him. And I kept hearing that, man. I was like, you know what? Fuck it, dude. Whatever this is going to be, just let it be.
You know what that is? That is the moment in the big book where Bill says God is either everything or he is nothing. There comes a moment where you need to man up, grab your sack, and make a decision. If he's nothing, go blow your brains out with chemicals. If he's everything, you just lay over in his arms.
And that's where I was. That's where I was, man. And immediately things started happening. I had a friend reach out. Hey, I got a client that needs some landscaping done. I had somebody reach out, and this is another.
That was fast too. By the way, you got that job real fast.
It was immediately, within days. I had another person reach out from 15 years ago.
Out of nowhere,
right? He
That's
messaged
insane,
me on Facebook.
Dude. I love that shit.
It was a friend request on Facebook, and he said, "Hey," and I thought somebody had died because it's been so long, right? Like my response was, "Who died? What's going on?" You know, that was my immediate response to him. Oh, I'm just wondering if you're still doing landscaping because I got some work around the house and I can't do it because I'm diabetic and I've lost my leg and all these things, right? I get there, we start talking about money. $8,000 is all I could remember. All I can hear, $8,000. He needs, and he said it was such a struggle for me to call you. I've hated you for so long and I've had such a resentment that I can't shake. And as soon as I heard that word resentment, I knew this shit was not about money. It was about me making an amends to this dude. I did him so wrong. I robbed his wife. I had my girlfriend at the time get him out of the house so I could go in the house and take a shoebox of money out from under her bed while she was asleep. I robbed somebody's apartment in his work van with him driving in the middle of the day. I owed this man a huge amends, right? And I was able to put me aside again, right? Put this money, what I need, aside and do God's work. Do what we're doing this for and make this amends, man. And I was able to do that. And I worked for him last weekend, actually, right? Like, this is a progressive thing. Like, he continuously has all this work because he can't do it anymore, right? And at first it was like, okay, let me make a financial amends to you and do this work for free. And he told me absolutely not and paid me triple what I had quoted him, right? And he's been doing that every job. It's like, I quote you this price. Well, I'm going to give you this much. Is that okay? I guess. You know.
So what he's going to go through here, and we're going to fast forward, is all these little details started falling into place.
Yeah.
And he's calling me and he's reporting, and I'm like, okay, let's keep going. Okay, let's keep going. God's at work here.
Yeah.
And again, God, higher power, whatever the hell it is, it's a force that if you use it and you prove it to yourself it works, you'll use it again, and it continues to work. So I want to get to that point where it's like two points of your story, which to me were fantastic. One is, I know the point when in the actual court when you didn't have the full amount.
Yeah. So,
but then there was something before that. I forgot. It was the piece of. All right. Well, let's just talk about when you actually. Oh, I know. The felony's getting expunged.
Yeah.
He's waiting. I won't steal your thunder, but you're waiting to hear because he's thinking, if I go to court and they can see my record, I am screwed. Yeah. But if I get these expunged, and you had put this in a while ago.
Oh yeah.
And they had told you it's a wait. The state government, by the way, moves like molasses, okay? Yeah. So tell them what happened.
So the expungement was, 8, 9, 10 months in the making, right?
Right.
And I talked to my lawyer about this new case now, and I've gotten a couple of the expungements back in this time, like some misdemeanors, some little stuff here and there. And we go to court for the first time, like, okay, you got, we push it off for 30 days or whatever it was, 45 days. And my lawyer at the time, he was looking into my expungement also as far as dates. And we were still, it should have already come in. The expungement should have already come in, and it hadn't. So we were thinking that it's not going to get expunged. And so the week of court, I guess.
It was close.
Yeah, and maybe it was within that week of court. I get a letter in the mail, and it says the felony was expunged, right? It's gone. So they don't see that robbery, that theft. They don't see that anymore, right? Like Chris said, I'm still sick. I'm still short. I go into court and I don't have all the money, right? Like, as much as God showed up, as much as we did, I was still $2,000 short, and I didn't tell my lawyer. Right? We get there and he's like, "Do you have the restitution?" Yes, I do, because I got a credit card in my pocket, and if need be, I'll swipe it. Right? I'll go in debt for this, no problem. So yes, I have it. I have $6,000 in my pocket. He's back and forth for almost 3 hours with the prosecutors and the judges, and he finally comes out and he kind of raises his eyebrows. I'm like, shit, I know that look. That's not good. And he's like, let's go around the corner and talk. I'm
That's
like,
not
shit,
good
I'm
either.
going to jail.
Oh,
right?
no,
I am
dude.
going to jail. This shit doesn't work, Chris. What the hell? So we go around the corner and talk, and he has this little yellow piece of paper in his hand. He's like, all right, so here's the deal, man. Let me know if you want to take this deal or not. The judge wants you to pay, and mind you, I have not told him how much I have yet. The judge wants you to pay $6,000 today. They're not going to charge you with a felony because you're expungement. You're going to get 2 years on the shelf. No, I'm sorry. You're going to get 2 years on the shelf, conditionally discharged for 1 year. Meaning, as long as I don't screw up over the next 365 days, this felony, this misdemeanor goes away. It's like it never ever happened. And I get to pay the other $2,000 over the period of the next 2 years that I'm on parole, probation, whatever, at $50 installments, right? And when he said that, I said, hold on, how much did you just say I have to pay today? And he said, $6,000. Is that okay? You have it all, right? And I was like, no, I got $6,000 in my pocket, right? Like, to the dime, like that was it.
See, and the devil's in the details with recovery juice. So us old timers, I heard clearly what LJ said earlier, if y'all picked it up. I show up for court. I do not have the money needed. I do not have enough. And God gave you exactly enough for what you needed that day.
He knew what was going on.
And again, it ain't about tomorrow. It ain't about the extended circumstances of probation. It's about today. I had exactly to the penny what I needed for today. And that, my friend, is the story I was hoping that you were going to walk through to be able to share at meetings in the future to help other new people. Because I guarantee you, everybody down at VOA has court cases, and they don't believe that this shit's going to work either. Every guy I've ever worked with, and I've gotten men out of fucking, like I said, 53 felonies. He should have been buried under the jail. That's his words. Yeah. And the man's a free man today because of the principles and the higher power and the spiritual program, 12 steps. It's just unbelievably powerful. So thank you for being brave enough to take your sponsor at his word. Even if you're holding on to their bootstraps going, I'm shaking like a leaf. I don't believe it. I've been there. I have lost sleep and sweated myself to death over shit. From terror. You can't control the terror. Mm-hmm. You know, this idea I'm going to lose my freedom, or this day I'm going to die from a fatal disease, or whatever the shit you're going through. Yeah. And so I totally had your back and was very empathetic, saying, I understand you feel that way, man. I would feel the same way, bro. But stay with me. We'll walk through this together. It's going to be okay.
Yeah. I'm so glad I did.
And you had a friend of ours who's in recovery who happened to be your lawyer, too.
Yeah.
So that worked out even better. So I am just so amazed. This is the new guy. This transformation, which is a word Bill uses in the big book a lot, the transformation that these steps can bring in your life. Before we wrap it up, I was curious if anything struck Dan's mind about any of this or anything he might want to say about watching LJ's growth, and especially his birthday this past month.
Well, the birthday was great, and that was an awesome letter to read and just great, man, to watch people recover, you know. And I'll tell you something that I do remember, and I don't know if either one of you remember this particularly. Uh-oh. But
we're in trouble now.
It's tough to get on Christopher's roster. It's no easy thing. He don't just take anybody. And I don't think, if I remember correctly, Christopher was not quite ready to sponsor LJ in the beginning, and he watched him, and LJ could have easily turned around and said, well, heck with that, but LJ did not. LJ stayed persistent, and almost to the point that I like to giggle and think it like LJ almost made Christopher sponsor him. He wanted it so bad, and I know that the flip side of that is that Christopher sees that desire and that willingness and that in there, well, that's the kind of guy I want, right? I don't want the guy that'll turn around and walk away at the first drop of the hat, which I will give LJ a lot of credit, because mostly alcoholics and addicts will not do that, man. They somehow or another, disease, if you get one tap on the shoulder that says go the other way, and that's the easy way out, that's the way we take. And I specifically remember that. And to be honest with you, in the very beginning, I didn't think Christopher was going to take you up. I watched it happen, and I didn't think, I thought you were barking up a tree you wouldn't get to climb, but it turned around, it is, you know, I mean, we sharing these things with each other, and it's almost like it's happening to you, right? When you hear this pinch that LJ's gotten, you know, has found himself in, and man, you feel it. for him,
Yeah.
you know. And then the flip side of it, you get to feel that joy and elation when God does what God does once again, you know, because even though I didn't have 50 or 37, the man on this side of the camera had one, and I'm clean off paper today. And, you know, and that happened in a relatively quick matter of time. And even better than that is that, like, you're not carrying it. You know, that stuff weighs on you on a day to day, and even with them sitting there, you still working on getting some of them clean, or is there anything?
Yeah, there's
left?
still a lot of them that are in the air.
In the air, yeah.
But
you know, golly, well, you think they're gonna expunge some of them?
Yeah.
You know, it's almost like, well, why don't y'all just, if you're either gonna do it or don't do it? But you know, I have full confidence that the rest of, you know, the again, over and over again, the evidence piles up so deep, there's no way I can deny it. You know, to watch you and listen to you testify that, and other men in there that are in legal trouble and think they're stuck forever. You know, I had a little inkling when I got in trouble, so much that, and it was tough, and I went through my stuff, no doubt, but a point hit me where I had a feeling that this too shall pass, man. I'm not stuck in this bucket forever. You know, you want to say, you know, we tend to, and the commoners want to think a felony is forever, right? And that's kind of what we feel like. But actually, no. We can get that stuff off our back by, and I don't know any other way to do it. Yeah. These 12 steps and practice these principles is it greases the skids for getting clean. And, you know, I just want to say, man, and I mean this with all my heart, watching you has inspired me from the get-go, man. And I don't know what it was and why, but I have had a warm spot in my heart from you from the beginning. I could feel LJ's discomfort and his he just really was scared to be at the spiritual underground. And that's one of the things that I try to override, is to make a guy feel a little bit more comfortable, because I know I could see it in you that this was not easy for you. But you stood up in the face of it and took one step and another step and another step, and look at where you're at today, man. And I love you to death. You do inspire me, and you have some of the most amazing recovery story from wreckage of the past to getting it cleaned up that I personally know. Probably the biggest one that I personally know. And the biggest example.
Being able to turn that around is the miracles of recovery, because most people who have those kind of records in their childhood, it's just faded. You're going to be in the system.
They don't make the turnaround.
So I'll pile on for that to wrap it up. I think LJ is just a pleasure to sponsor. He's one of my favorite sponsees. I don't really have favorites, but I'm just saying, because you do everything right, man. You stay in touch with me. You share the juice, that's big in my life. If you're a sponsor out there, I have to have juice, and I make my sponsees. One of his boys spoke at a meeting this past week, and he called me immediately and reported the juice of seeing his guy do that. What a great job! So just love you to death, man. It's a pleasure to know you. And if you had any last words you wanted to say to any newcomer out there who's thinking this AA stuff is a bunch of crap, and there's nothing we can say to convince them otherwise, but any last words you might say to anybody out there who might be suffering from this disease?
First off, if you were listening, you know, if I can do it, you can do it. Just give yourself that chance, man. Give yourself that chance, because you are absolutely worth it, and your best life lies ahead of you. Just trust the process and stick and stay.
And find that one guy you can relate to. It's just going to be, and it's not necessarily relate to in the sense that they have your story, because you and I have different stories, but they have what you want. They have a light. They have something that shows you a way out, an exit door from all that shit. Yep. So I've just been a pleasure to know you, and I know we got many more years ahead of us, so we're going to keep rolling through. So again, please join us, and if you want to send us questions to the I Am 12 podcast, we do have an email. It's IAM12, the word recovery, @gmail.com, and send us any questions. And when we don't have a speaker guest, we will definitely answer your questions and help you out with that. And we like to close with the Serenity Prayer.
I'm going to jump in before our prayer real quick. the Spiritual Underground podcast. If you want to hear more of LJ's story, different angle, and specifically, I had LJ and Jennifer come in one day and talked about navigating recovery in a relationship and that kind of thing. That was a super powerful episode too. So you can go find Spiritual Underground podcast anywhere and dig into these inspirational stories like LJ's. And there's actually a bunch more to listen to if you need some inspiration.
Hell yeah. And we hope we've inspired you to start building your own inspirational story, because it happens to everyone who does the tools. All you got to do is find your teacher. All right. Well, we like to close with the Serenity Prayer, as they do in many meetings. So let's do the prayer, guys. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Just for today. Keep coming back. It works if you work it, and you die if you don't. Woo! Thanks, folks. Thanks for joining us. Thank you, LJ. Come back next time. We'll see you.